You're listening to The Riff, a podcast by North Point Church. There's a lot more to the Christian journey than what can be presented in a 30-minute time slot from a stage on Sunday morning. Our host and lead pastor, Jeremy Johnson, highlights the vision of North Point Church and the Christian journey through stories, interviews, and unfiltered faith ramblings. We hope the conversations will help you engage in how faith interacts with your life. I think we're ready. Let's go for it.
Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to another episode of The Riff. Today, we are going to interview Jody Dow. Jody is our director of the Springfield Dream Center. Jody's a phenomenal communicator. If you've been coming to North Point for a while, you're probably familiar with her. If not, I think today's going to be really helpful. We talk a lot. One of our 5 things that we're trying to create in the lives of every North Pointer is to live an arrow out life. That life, naturally, we kind of are about ourselves, but when we force those arrows out and serve others, that's a foundational ingredient of someone who's beneficial to the kingdom of God and to the community we live in. Jody represents this so well. Ever since I've known her, she's been an arrow out person, geared towards helping those around her. And as she leads the Dream Center, it really helps really our culture as a church that we must be about the people outside our walls. So let's dive into this conversation and listen to this interview with Jody. Well, welcome to yet another episode of The Riff. The Riff is my favorite podcast that I'm on weekly, and probably WEAKLY weekly. But I am glad today is not going to be weak because I have a very strong guest. And I'm not going to say Jody Glazner because her name is Jody Dow.
Got it.
Jody Dow.
You nailed it.
But I've known you as Jody Glazner longer technically than Jody Dow.
Most people have.
But legally, you're now Jody Dow. Why?
You know, almost 3 years I've been Jody Dow now. Yeah. Married Chuck. Now we have baby Jude.
Oh, my word.
And
I was there.
You were there.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So, Jody, you've been a part of North Point for, I don't know, I think forever because it was before I was here. How many years now?
So I've been on staff for 11 years and have been around North Point for about probably 12 and a half, 13.
Okay, so I want to get into your story a little bit here today, kind of your journey, and then talk about the Dream Center. But right now we're talking to North Pointers and probably the North. How long has the Dream Center been around?
So we're 4.5 years old. So there are people who are probably at North Point and have never... Yes. They weren't here when Dream Center was an idea or becoming. So they walk in and they're like, oh, we have a Dream Center. What is that thing? Well,
and that's why they're listening today. So if you have an opportunity to just tell anybody who's kind of newer to North Point what a Dream Center is, give us a little bit of description.
Yeah, so Springfield Dream Center, 4.5 years old. We get to be a part of North Point. And so you guys launched us into existence. And I say launch because that whole process of starting really feels like you just kind of shoot for the stars and go for it 4.5 years ago. And so what we get to do is provide help for today, hope for tomorrow to our community. And we're located on the north side of Springfield where the city had really discovered a few years ago that we needed more resources on the north side. So we were seeing statistics here in this part of town that weren't the kind of statistics that make you want to have your kid go live there. And so our crime rates were higher, our employment rates were lower, our poverty rates were higher. The safety was a concern. Infrastructure, even when you look at things like sidewalks, transportation, access to internet, where it sits on the grid for different resources. They just realized about 5-6 years ago that the north side of Springfield needed a concentration of resources, of time, of effort to help it have great opportunities. So they call that area Zone 1. That's where the Dream Center is located. So strategically, we wanted to be within the area where we felt like we could best serve our neighbors on a weekly and daily basis. And then our help and hope comes through practical resources, whether that's food, whether it's a church opportunity now through the Dream Center campus, or different programming that is more the relief side. And then it's coupled with the hope side, which we consider that to be futuristic. So those are the things that invest in people that create long-term change and future through classes, Dream Center Academy, and some of our programs saddle both of those sides. So Dream Center Campus hits both that immediate relief and that long-term resource.
So just south of Kearney, just east of Kansas Expressway, if you've not been up to the Dream Center, is about 3 miles from the Springfield campus?
Yeah.
Probably. And so some of the things that you're just mentioning is that caused a gap of services, even like, I don't remember the term, a food, it was when the grocery stores were gone, it was, what was it, a food gap or what?
So it's called a food desert.
Food desert.
Yes. Okay. And they consider a food desert when you can't access fresh food within so many mile radius. And so you may have, like a gas station that's all processed package. So to be in a food desert, you would maybe have access to that, but not access to things like dairy, produce, vegetables, which there's a huge link between a lack of nutrition and food-related illnesses that you see often in poverty cultures.
Yeah. So we have, whether it's even some churches, whether it's grocery stores, whether it's schools, a lot of them going towards the suburbs or out of the immediate area. And so great opportunity to come in. So tell us a little bit about, I know it's probably broad, but who's kind of the target audience of all the activities at the Dream Center? Tell us a few of your favorite activities of the Dream Center. And then I want to go back to your story, but who is the Dream Center specifically serving?
So our target, we've really been able to hone in on that over the last 18 to 24 months. We serve families, but we also serve seniors. We serve kids. So what is it really that this type of person is who we want to go after? Right. We realized it's the family that's seeking stability. Okay. And so they're ready for change. They're ready to take that next step because our families do the hard work. We just provide the resource, the opportunity, and then cheer them on. But they have to be ready to work for it. So it's those that are ready for change and they're seeking this next step of stability. So nationally, there's 10 factors that have been recognized through research and development that these 10 things create stability. And so as parents, you probably are trying to teach your girls these things without even knowing it. So it's
Leanne probably is.
Yeah, maybe more Leanne. But it's things like transportation, housing, access to mental and physical health, affordable childcare for your kids, having education that then leads to employment opportunities that can take care of your family. And so none of it is really rocket science on its own. But when you look at, if you think of it like a bridge, that life is this bridge taking us from one place to another. If one of those pillars is knocked out, then it can create instability that makes it difficult to even reach the next pillar. So what we try to do is to help build those things back up for families through classes, resources, partnerships, and collaborations in town. And so we still serve seniors and we still serve families or those that are unhoused. But really what we're targeting now are those that have a couple of those pillars in place and they're looking to just complete the bridge. So how do I get from point A to point B? How do I reach the dream for my family? And we help build alongside them. Yeah.
Well, I love the Dream Center. I've said this before. It's probably my favorite ministry, my favorite activity of the mission of North Point. I really believe that we could probably be effective in in what God's called us to do here if we continue to have a Dream Center and we weren't allowed to gather, which I've said that before. We saw that to be true last year. And I love what you bring to the table, Jody. You're a phenomenal gift to, I believe, not just to North Point, but to our city. And maybe you are hearing or have heard is the city has given a lot of favor to Jody because you connect real well with what we want to be a part of as a city. And, the Springfield Business Journal, just called you one of the 20 gals that we need to follow. And they did that with the guys. And I think I was 21 because I wasn't on that list. But I would say, 100% is everybody that I know that meets you, they sense something in you of what you're passionate about and how you help us connect with other people. So what I want to do is I want to go back a little bit in time. Walk us through kind of this development of who you are today. How did that come to be? And how did this passion to reach people in this way, how did it start? And kind of give us that journey.
Yeah. So, I'm a new parent now, so I'm watching things from a little bit of a different perspective now. I'm watching Jude develop his personality, and you start to see these patterns of how he reacts and how he does. And I look at him and I'm like, man, sometimes that's really frustrating, the things you do, because you're a child. And I'm like, do we need to climb on everything all the time? But in the same moment, I'm like, there's something in that of he wants to discover. Of he wants to ask the question even before he has words to say it. And I think I know to watch for those patterns because somehow my parents did it. And my parents parented before there were parenting podcasts and books and conferences. Like you were winging it and you were trying to just learn from maybe if you had friends that had kids. But there was something in me, even as a child, that my parents saw and nurtured. And that was the fact that I cared deeply for others.
Okay.
My brother and I have a very small age gap. And so there's just 16 months in between us. When he was born, I told everyone he was my baby because it was like a real life baby doll. And in that, somehow my parents discovered I wanted to take care of others. I was a nurturer. I was a sharer. I was watching out for him. And there are seasons of his life that he probably wished I wasn't so involved. And, but through that, I think they didn't squelch that in me. They taught me, you can't climb in his crib. That's a suffocation hazard for the baby. But they didn't take away from me this opportunity to share and care. And so even as I was growing up as a kid, they found opportunities to let me be me. And so when I'm in middle school, they had sent us to a small private school in town. And so we had weekly chapel. And it was like miniature church service, as Christian schools do. And so they had these missionaries that were in, and they were explaining what it meant to be missionaries, where they were placed. And they were working as surf instructors. And I'm like, you're missionaries and you're getting to surf all day? But
in Missouri?
No, they were in the Maldives Islands. They were a little more exotic than landlocked Missouri. Truman Lake.
Maui of the Midwest.
The Maui of the Midwest. But they're talking about their whole point of how they approached being missionaries in this foreign country was to build relationships with people. Okay. And that there's power in relationship. That when you know someone, you can encourage someone to grow. And when people feel known, they feel important, they're more likely to then open up to the conversation of what's possible. And they were talking about being this missionary in that mindset of through just building relationships, they were getting people to understand their potential. They were getting people to understand the hope that we have through Jesus as they lived these lives, and people could then ask them like, why do you approach the trials differently? Why do you approach the bad things and still have peace? Where does that come from? And it came from relationship. It didn't come from them preaching or teaching at them. It didn't come from them forcing anything. And I just remember going home and telling my mom, I want to do that in the United States. Like I never had that desire I want to go save the world. And I think very quickly I knew it wasn't me getting to save anything or anyone. Like that's not the desire that I had. The desire I had is, man, I want to go serve people till they know what's possible and what they're able to accomplish. And that there's a God who loves them enough that the dream's not dead. Yeah. He hasn't given up on them or forgotten the things in their heart. And so
I would love to be a fly on the wall and see middle school Jody processing as God starts planting this dream in your heart. So how did you develop it from that point, and kind of figure out this is something that God's gifted you to do?
My dad's a really practical thinker. So he's like, if you want to serve people as an adult, start serving people now. And it was when he had Rotary events. There was a Rotary basketball tournament every year, and I would volunteer with my dad. We had a history festival, and I would go serve alongside my dad in the food tent. And it was just finding ways of, if there's something inside of me that wanted to serve and be available to help people, I needed to start practicing that and using that muscle from an early age. And so they gave me opportunities. They created space in our busy schedule to make sure I could be at things. And then I had incredible teachers, youth pastors, who gave me opportunities to speak, to learn, to go on a missions trip, to see the desires that I was feeling like, man, God's putting this on. We say things like, God puts this on my heart, which means it's in our mind. We're thinking about it.
Right.
And then the people around me, the adults, said, let's give you opportunities. And I think there's something really great when adults say, how can we give the next generation opportunity to not just see what we want them to see, but to start seeing what they want to see and what they can see, and discovering that. And so I had amazing adults who said, sure, go serve. Preach the message at Youth Sunday on a Sunday morning, lead this outreach event for your high school. And I don't know why they said yes, but they did. And I'm grateful for it on this side.
Yeah. Wow. We're gonna take a quick break, and then I want to talk about when you went to college and found North Point and walk through how that's developed. But I think we're still looking for a sponsor. Can you believe that?
Oh,
man. You gotta believe there are banks full of people who are saying, hey, can we sponsor the Riff? They just don't know how. So until then, we'll create our own commercials.
I love it.
Like this.
Let's check it out.
Do you have trouble sleeping at night?
Yes.
Do you wake up more exhausted than when you went to bed?
I do.
Do you ever think, what was that dream even about?
All the time.
Well, we have a solution for you.
What?
The Dream Center, located here in Springfield, Missouri.
Hey, Ryan?
Ryan? Yeah.
It's not like that. It's not like that kind of dream center.
It's like sleep studies.
No.
Okay, so Jody, you have this experience hearing about missionaries. You start testing this by serving in practical ways. You go on mission trips. Walk me through what led you to Springfield, what led you to North Point, and kind of walk us through that journey.
Yeah, so I came to Missouri State to go to school. And as most freshmen do, we start figuring out like, okay, it's the first time in our life we've tried to discover church on our own. We grew up, my friends and I, we grew up small town America. So there were a ton of church options and you went to the same one for most of your life. And so we're like, how do you even pick a place? So we went to a couple that our older friends from college had talked about. And one day we checked out North Point. Okay. And I remember the first time I walked in, I was like, this is really different than what you grow up with in Harrisonville, Missouri at the Mennonite church. And so I'm like, man, there's just a lot happening. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of like noise. There's lights here. What is this? And so, but there was something about the church was talking about this desire to give back.
Okay.
And I thought, that fits with what I want my life to be about and what I believe church can be and should be for people. And there were a couple other places we checked out in town that never talked about anyone but themselves, which is not bad, but it wasn't what I felt like church was when I was reading, the New Testament. Right. And I'm watching how Jesus did church, how he gathered with people and how he cared for others. I'm like, some of these churches, everything is about today. This is for us. This is for you. This is for me. And when I went to North Point, it was, hey, here's what we're learning today, but also here's what we're going to do for those around us. And so I just started attending and plugging in, hopped in to volunteer with youth ministry because that was such a pivotal time in my life where because of the investment of adults, I get the opportunities that I see now. And so I'm like, I want to always give back to that age group. So hanging out with middle schoolers, getting ready to graduate from college, and I was applying for jobs elsewhere. And Troy Hartman, who's gone on to plant a church in Manhattan, Kansas, was the youth pastor at the time. And so, of course, he's my reference. And I'm like, hey, Troy, can you do this reference for this position that I'm applying for? And that position would have taken me away from Springfield. And he said, yes, but only if you apply for this open position we have at North Point. I'm like, I'll apply for it, but I don't want it. So I apply for it. I go through all the steps of this other interview, and I'm in the last thing. They've basically told me it's mine. And then they said, we do have to ask you just one more question. I said, okay. And they said, is there any reason why you would quit your contract before your 2-year agreement's up? And I think people hear from God in different ways. I'm not one of those people who it's like the audible voice comes from the sky and tells me something, but I will get these pauses. I've always said it's like a pause in my spirit. So because of my relationship with Jesus, I believe we have the helper of the Holy Spirit, and that comes through in helping us maybe sometimes not speak in the pause. It's that conscious, it's the little voice that maybe guides. And so I got this pause, and I just knew I couldn't take it. And one of the most terrifying feelings, because I thought, there's no way I'm turning this down to go take a job I'm not interested in. And nothing in that job description was my gift, strengths, anything. It was all stuff that I didn't know how to do or didn't really enjoy to do. And I just felt so confident of one of those moments of, this isn't a bad choice if I had said yes to, but it wasn't the right choice. And so I told them, I said, I'm so sorry, I can't accept this job. And I walked out, and my mom's sitting there, and she goes, how'd it go? And I said, I guess I'm going to work at North Point. And so I took the job with North Point, and the first 6 months was one of the most challenging times of my life, because I wasn't working in something I was good at. And I think God used that season to teach me humility, to teach me how to ask for help, to teach me how to be a learner and a grower in a way that I had not had to experience before. Okay. And so quickly, things shift and move. And so I then got to move out of the behind the scenes role into helping with middle school, into helping plan some service type of projects for students, because again, that's where my strength really was, is let's teach students how to serve and give them the opportunity to. And then moved into different youth ministry roles until a give back position opened up at North Point. And give back, is our way of being attached and committed to our community through service and practical help. So I was at Give Back, and then you and I started having the scariest conversations of Give Back is awesome, but are we missing part of the Good Samaritan story by only responding to big events, big issues, and everything being reactive? And so then I started reading it almost every day. I'm like, man, we're missing part of it. Nothing we were doing is wrong. It's great. I think we should be responsive to the needs of our community. But when you read the Good Samaritan story, there's this proactive approach that the Good Samaritan takes. It didn't make sense politically. It didn't make sense people-wise for him to be the one to stop. But he stops because he recognizes, he sees the need, and then he says, how do I meet it? And it was very simple. But the part that I felt like we didn't talk about when we were young, and it's like felt bored Jesus with the donkey who travels along, is that he goes back the next day and says, is there anything else he needs? And so we were missing that piece of, we were throwing great events for Christmas and back to school and serving, but we were missing that wraparound piece of, is there anything else they need the next day? Yeah. And so we started to have those conversations of what would that look like? And the idea for the Dream Center started to come around.
Yeah. And then probably about 5 years ago is you taken all these ideas. And I knew this about you, is I just feel like you were born to lead a Dream Center. And in Dream Center, I'm familiar with the term because there's it's kind of a national organization that came out of LA, the Dream Center, and we're connected there. But everyone looks different, every dream center, but what really a place of hope and help, right? And I know that that's who you are. That's what's going to happen. And about the time I felt like, man, I feel like God's probably preparing you for something like that. We had this opportunity for an old building that was probably not desired by a lot of people, but it was perfect for us because of location, which is now the Dream Center. And when God provided that, it just makes a lot of sense from my spot of to see someone who's God's prepared to lead this. Because we would have never been prepared to have a Dream Center if God hadn't prepared you as a middle schooler and even before and developed you through all these seasons. And so we've had a lot of learning. What are some of the things you've learned along the way with a Dream Center, running this 4 years into it?
So 4 years in, we have learned a lot, and we love to share what we've learned with other Dream Centers. But I always start with like, hey, listen, we have a fair share of mess ups. Yeah. One of my favorite mess up stories is we're sitting in Rise, which is a class on all the stability factors for our adults. And it's intensive. It works. It's awesome. And one of the moms says, I'm not afraid to fail anymore because I've watched Jody do it all the time. And I'm like, I mean, I think that's a compliment, but that hurts a little bit. But we've been very open with our families of this is a learning process. We're not always going to get it right.
Right.
And I think that's helped us build relationships that's really led to the good stuff that we see. Of our families don't think we're perfect. They don't think the Dream Center has it all together, but they know that we have their back and that we're going to get there together.
Yeah.
So, when we first opened Dream Center Academy, our after school program, we did not have a plan. We did not have the right things in place. Yeah. It was wild.
But we had a building.
And we thought, cool, let's do this thing.
Right.
We knew there was a need. And the way that program has grown over the last 4 years is beautiful. Of what we have now is amazing structure, curriculum that works, and it is solid. But we learned all that through the first year of messing up.
And God's brought such a great team, army of volunteers and staff that, and what I love about this is Jody, as you dream, don't be intimidated by the gaps that dream would cause, because God, every step of the way, whether it's finances or people, had brought people along. Now, I want to talk our last session on the other side of this next break. I want to talk about why give back is so important, maybe what some unique needs are here at the Dream Center. But check out this last break.
Have you ever wanted to own a company, write a book, and publish a magazine in the same week?
Well, yeah.
Have you ever wanted to build an empire of a shipping company just to invest in space travel?
I have.
Maybe have you ever had the desire to become a geneticist solely so you can extract DNA from mosquitoes that have been encased in amber for millions of years so you can build a theme park and call it Jurassic Park?
All the time.
Do these dreams seem unachievable to you?
They do.
Well, we have an answer for you. Check out the Dream Center, located here in Springfield, Missouri, where all of your wildest dreams can come true.
Ryan. Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Hey, man. I don't think that's what the Dream Center is.
Okay, so Jody, here's my question: is why, now that we have a Dream Center, are we good as North Point? Like, why does North Point still have to give back? Do we have to do things at other campuses? Why? And obviously, fundamentally, I scream, yes, give back, arrows out. We have to be a church about that. Dream Center is not where all of our delegated serving happens. Why is that true?
Here's the deal. Dream Center is an amazing part of give back. Right. And I think it becomes, this great picture throughout the week of we're giving, and it's awesome. But the Good Samaritan story has to be personal.
Yes.
And it can't be personal if it's only one place.
Right.
And so it has to come from each location, from each person being a part of that story, whether it's through their finances, whether it's through their time, whether it's through their volunteering. We as people have to be willing to give back because we see Jesus model it all through Scripture. And I think it's such a fundamental way. When I go back to what I learned as an 11-year-old, when we build relationships through serving and caring, that's how we get people to the place of having and being open to hope. of when I serve someone and then I invite them along later on the journey. Now we have a relationship where they trust where I'm inviting them into instead of just like throwing out random invites. And I think those work sometimes. But when we invest in our community and the care for the people around us, I think there's a great return in their lives and ours.
I think the Dream Center is the most important thing we do in Northwest Springfield. But it can't be the only thing we do at North Point. And so it's a great opportunity. If you're here listening and you hear and say, man, I want to be a part of that. There's so many programs. There's dozens of programs and opportunities throughout every week or any week, whether you want to sign up every week or try it out once, there's opportunities to serve here, but really every one of our campuses, there's practical ways we want to serve. We want to give back. Jody, I have to ask this question because we inherited this. It's a beautiful gift, but it's also like your neighbor giving you an older boat, right? So it's an investment, and God has provided along the way, to be able to create this center where we can use this as a hub of help and hope. If someone was there and they said, you're in luck. I've got access to resources if there is still a need at the Dream Center. What are some of the things that are out there right now that you're praying for that God would provide?
Absolutely. Well, one, when we pray for God to provide, we don't just pray for the endowment from the Queen of England or
that would be awesome. I've been watching The Crown.
We would take it.
Yeah.
But we also pray for what we call the regular giver to fit Dream Center into their monthly budget, whether we're talking a $10 amount, a $50 amount, or you're able to do the lump sum of $50,000. All of those price points work the vision and the mission of Dream Center forward. Right. But right now we have 64,000 square feet of space and we're at year 4.5. In our 10-year goal, we thought we would be in all parts of the building. When we open for Dream Center Academy for the 2021-2022 school year, there is 1/2 of the basement that will not be in use.
Wow.
So 3rd floor in use, 2nd floor in use, activity center in use.
Over 50,000 square feet are in use. Yeah.
And so what that does is it's put pressure on the building that programming needed and was planned for. But it also means now our 64,000 square feet of sweet old donated space has some work to be done. There are 3 new roofs that need to be replaced to the tune of $250,000. And we can section those pieces out, but really what that's going to take is it's going to take the generosity of others saying, let's keep the roof on so that the programming can happen. Yeah. We have security upgrades as we move into new parts of the building for Dream Center Academy. We've got about $10,000 to $15,000 left of security upgrades that need to happen for us to be at optimal safety within the building. And you're looking at some large ticket items like that. We have bathrooms that need vents in them. And so it's just one of those things, like old buildings didn't always have to be vented. Right. And now for our kids to be able to use them and then pass inspection, you're looking at $7,000 of bathroom work that has to be done. So things add up when you have an old building because everything's retrofitted. Those things aren't there. We're milking HVAC systems to just last another year. And we know when those things go down, they're $20,000 a pop. And you've got these hits that come left, right. Those are things that happen and are important for programming to take place. Right. And then you have programming.
And you have making this happen.
Then you have what it costs to make this happen. But love it. We love it. For $12 a day, a kid can go to Dream Center Academy. They learn social and emotional skills. They have a snack provided. They have a team of incredible people who are trauma informed, which means they're trained how to approach our kids in what they come from. They're trained in how to handle students on hours 9, 10, and 11 of their day. And they do an incredible job. And so $12 provides incredible resource for those students. Yeah. Jennifer Kennedy, who's a volunteer from the Nixa campus, does all of our menu planning for Wednesday night community dinners. And she has worked partnerships with Ozarks Food Harvest to where she can serve people for $1 a day. So $1 a meal. So on Wednesdays, when we serve community dinner, we have families and businesses, individuals who adopt that dinner, whether it's, hey, this is how my siblings and I are going to celebrate our mom's birthday. She doesn't need anything. So we're going to make sure that this week's dinner is in honor of mom.
Right.
It's $300 and you're feeding 300 people,
Right.
which is incredible, the resources that are working. And that's what I would say is our team, they have figured out how do we maximize the way we serve at minimal budget, knowing that so much of our building costs big dollars that we can't control. So
Right.
then how do we control the things we can of maximum impact of programming in a really budget-friendly way?
No, I love that, but at the same time,
We want them to dream.
Yeah.
And we want them to push forward.
right,
And that happens from margin.
I feel like we have a scrappy team and we have the best volunteers on the planet. I love the volunteers, and not only just North Pointers, but others in the community who dive in and they have such a great experience with your team and they serve and they understand the practical deal. I would say to all North Pointers who are joining us on this podcast, consider how you might, one, get involved at the Dream Center, whether it's once a quarter, once a year. There's something that happens in you when you see what happens through the Dream Center. So come check it out. Go to the springfielddreamcenter.com. Consider making a donation to the Dream Center or even a regular donation, because I promise every penny that goes to the Dream Center is maximized. It's stretched more than like those old machines that you put in a penny and it comes out like all weird. I think that's what the Dream
That's
Center
what we
does.
do.
You
Yeah.
stretch the pennies. But here's what I would say: this is, keep dreaming. Like wear out this building, Jody. I mean, wear it out. Tell your team to wear it out. Do so much ministry here. We don't want cobwebs here. Would rather have worn down air conditioning systems, run down kitchen appliances, because we can replace that stuff. And so dream big dreams. Keep being scrappy. And North Pointers, let's do what we do. Let's get involved. Let's invest. Let's love our neighbors, and let's see God provide the miracles as well as all the things necessary. So Jody, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. And man, I hope y'all who are listening have a great week. Check out SpringfieldDreamCenter.com, and we'll catch you on the next episode of The Riff.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. Submit a question for the podcast at northpointchurch.tv/podcast. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.